Hey soulmates, welcome. Today I'm going to show you how I created this masterpiece for my dear friend and sister for her big day. For this tutorial, we'll be concentrating mainly on the lower part, but I'm going to show you how I did the lace placement for the sleeves and also for some parts of the body. And also, I'm going to give you some tips on how to achieve this entire look. It's fully detailed, so kindly stay tuned. So the skirt part of this wedding dress is a full 360 degrees flare skirt, but we used a pattern of 180 degrees, and I'll explain why as we go. 180 degrees is half of a circle, so we're going to be using half of our waist measurement for this. For the 180 degrees flare, you're going to fold your paper like so. You're going to, first of all, the formula is your circumference. The formula to get the radius is your circumference divided by 3.14, which is pi. And then you're going to fold your paper like so. So the answer for that is approximately 5 inches. So we're assuming that we're working with a skirt length of 5 inches as well. So in total, we're just trying to make sure that the paper is up to 10 inches. To be on the safe side, always add an extra 1 inch just so that you don't have to refold your fabric. So what you want to do is place your tape at that corner of the fold and mark 5 inches and also mark the 10 inches as well. You're going to place your tape at the corner like so, and then you're going to mark your 5 inches and also mark the 10 inches like so. You're going to repeat this process until you get a curve. So you place your tape at that corner. I'm sorry that the camera didn't capture the corner. So you place your tape like so, and you continue to mark the 5 inches and also the 10 inches, starting from the corner of the fold. Remember that we folded the paper just once. Not twice, just once. We folded the paper to just get one fold, and it's from the corner that the fold is that we are making these marks. Next, you're going to connect those points, but first of all, make sure that those lines are straight at the edges. The reason for doing that is so that when you cut it out, you don't have a V shape at that end. You just make sure that it's straight there, then you can now do the curves like so. And when you're done, you're going to cross check. Please always cross check, no matter how experienced you are. You're going to cross check that when you multiply it into 2 by 2, you're getting that measurement. So here I got 8 inches. When you multiply 8 by 2, you get 16 inches. So we have 8 times 2, which will give us 16. And then you cut out like so. 180 degrees is half of a circle, and this is the representation of 180 degrees flare. If you want to create pleats on the waist of your client, you can just make the waist excess. For example, if your client's waist is 30, instead of cutting a 180 degrees flare of 30 inches waistline, you can make the waistline 40. Or any number you want to add, you can add it, and then when you're done, you just create some pleats just for, the skirt to stand. We made the waistline bigger so that we could create some more pleats, and we're beginning with the crinoline net layer because it is going to be shorter than the actual fabric. So we placed the crinoline net and then we folded it, so there are 2 layers of the crinoline net here, and this is the back unfold and this is the front unfold. The reason for doing this is so that when we open it up, it's going to create a full circle. That's why we used half of the waist measurement. Carefully pin the 2 layers together. Always pin, no matter how experienced you are. It will help you to reduce errors. So here we're just extending the side seam line we don't want any joining. That's why we're cutting it like this. We don't want any joining on the sides. That's why we're cutting it like this, because we're going to conceal the joining on the front. So kindly pay attention. Here we're just extending the length of the front according to your client's measurement. For example, my client's skirt length is 52 and we used 50.5 for this because it is 1.5 inches shorter than the length we used for the outer fabric, which is the Organdi fabric. As we moved to the side, we began to increase the length, but for the front side, we just maintained that 50.5 inches that we had at the front. And the reason for doing that is because you don't want the skirt folding over in front or being too long. You don't want your client stepping on her dress. But as you approach the sides, you can just increase the length. For example, we use 50.5 at the front. When you get to the side, you can add about 5 inches just so that it's longer, 5 inches and above, but don't make it too long so that it doesn't begin to sag or fall on the sides. You want a beautiful rounded circle, so just don't add too many inches to the side. So notice that I have someone assisting me, holding the tape at the waistline of the curve, and then I'm on the other end drawing the line. It takes two to create something like this. Actually, it takes a village. You're going to see as we progress. So make sure that if you're going to do something like this, for the work to be easier for you, try to have somebody around you to assist you so that you don't get tired or so you don't make mistakes. So at this point, when we got to that part, we realized that we had to add some fabric because the length was not going to be enough for what we wanted to add for the side. So what we did was that we went to the side back, just like it is here, and we made sure we got the same length we had on that side, and then we went ahead and measured what we had on either sides of that side seam. So we measured about 10 inches to the left of that side line, and then we got that same 10 inches to the right of that side line. And in total, we had about 20 inches. So we just knew that we needed to add some length of 20 inches and then also extend the side downward. Don't be confused, just pay attention and you would understand what I'm trying to explain. So here I'm just marking where the curve is going to continue, and the next step for us to do was just to continue increasing the length as we progress towards the back. We're still going to come back and extend the side, but for now I just wanted us to, achieve the back train. So for the back, you can begin to increase as you want, depending on how long your client wants the train to be. So for example, if you're making the train up to 70 or 80 inches at the back, this is where you would get that measurement when you are very close to the center back. But make sure that you don't go more than 10 inches from the actual center back so that it has like a circular effect at the back and it doesn't look too straight. So just continue to connect the points like so, and then when you're done, pin before you cut. Crinoline net can be very funny if you don't pin the layers together. When you finish cutting, you just realize that one layer is longer than the other one and you don't want that. So here we cut out, the curves that we already drew, and then you're going to do the same for the back. Notice the difference between, the curve at the back and the curve for the front. The back is definitely longer. So we use the pieces we got from cutting out to extend the side seam. length. So you're going to join some nets there, and then the reason for joining this net here is just because we want to extend the length of the side, where the side seam is supposed to be. Like I explained earlier, don't worry, it's not going to be visible by the time you're done doing it. So here we're just overlapping the layers by 0.5 inches, which is half of an inch, and that will be the joining allowance. So we're going to join that extension to the main cutout. The length we needed to extend it by was not a lot. It was not a lot at all. And then we just marked it, and then when we were done marking it, we connected it to the curve. So again, I had someone to assist me by holding the tape along the waistline, and then I got my desired length, and then we began to move the tape just so that we could get a smooth curve from, the one that we had done earlier. So the same thing we did for the front, we did for the back. The only difference is if you're doing it for the back, you can increase the length if you want. So just continue to connect it like so. When you connect it, be careful. Just make sure you take your time so that you don't make any mistake, because this is a lot of fabric to make any mistake. Because if you make any mistake, you have to buy the fabric again, or you have to go back and start correcting mistakes. So try and be patient so that you don't make any mistake. Also notice the way we move along the waistline when we're moving at the bottom. The reason we do that is just so that we can, get appropriate measurements, because you can't stay at one point. It is a curve, so just make sure that you move. As you're moving at the bottom, the person assisting you is also moving at the top part of the waist curve, and then you cut out. We already added the sewing allowance to the pattern, so that's the sewing allowance for the waist. So just cut out that curve of the waist like so. And when you finish cutting out this, just keep it aside. We're going to come back to it. The next step is for us to cut the Organdi fabric. This is it's called a waterproof Organdi fabric, and then we doubled the Organdi to reduce the transparency. I got my assistants to help me with the folding, and then here we carefully placed the hard net on it. So Organdi is a very funny fabric to deal with as well, so you need to be careful when working with it. So what we did was that we cut the first 2 layers of the Organdi, and when we were done, we placed the other 2 layers. So here, this is just one fold of the Organdi fabric. So we went ahead to pin together. Like I said earlier, always pin. So the Organdi should be about 1.5 inches longer than the crinoline net, and the reason for doing this is just so that the crinoline net doesn't pop out. The Organdi would fold over at the bottom, just to create a better hem outlook. The length we used for the front, like I said earlier, was 52 inches. And the reason we used 50.5 for the crinoline is because 50.5 is what you get when you take away 1.5 from 52 inches. So here we added the second layer of the Organdi, and we folded it into 2 like we did for the other layer, and then we cut it out. In total, we had 4 layers of Organdi here, and by the time we open it up, it will just be double on each side. So we're going to join the center front of each layer. Like I said, We got 4 layers of it, but in total we're just going to have 2 layers, and that's the joining of the center front. The back is still going to be open because we're not done. So here we're just carefully trying to merge the 2 layers, but your concentration should always be on that center front where you have joined your fabric, and then just always make sure that you give it a good press before you proceed to the next level. So here we're pinning one side of the center front. Your focus should be on merging this center front so that it doesn't move, like the both of them don't move away from each other. So carefully place and pin the 2 layers. Always align any joining you have just so that you don't have any double exposure. Notice that we finished pinning the 2 layers of one side of the center front together before we moved to the other side to pin. And the reason we did this is just because we want it to look like one fabric. We don't want it to look like we joined 2 fabrics together for thickness. So when we were done, we started trying to confirm the length to be sure that it was okay. And then this is the full circle. Now you can see what we've been trying to achieve. The open part is the center back, while the part where the tape is the center front. And here, like I told you, it takes a village. So here I had one of my assistants stand in the middle, and then we carefully placed the crinoline net because it takes a lot of time to align this organdi fabric, so we had to be very careful. So what we did was we aligned the center front of the organdi with the center front of the crinoline, and then here we're just smoothing out the crinoline net layer. And then we went ahead to sew the hems together and flip it. And then here, this is the bodice part. We have the base of the corset, and then here we're just placing the lace. Notice that the lace has a panel pattern, and then it has a replica on either sides of the lace. So here I just pinned it flat so that I could get a perfect look of the panel lace. So carefully smoothing and pin the lace fabric on the underlying layer, and then when you're done, you're going to flip it over and cut on that side, the back side. The reason for doing this is so you can see what you're cutting out properly, because from the front you might not see the edges of the corset bodice pattern. And then when you're done, you're going to take it to your sewing machine and sew it down along the edges. Also make sure you notch the waistline because this corset extends below the waistline. So make sure you notch the waistline. So this is the bust cup, and then this is the other one. This is without the lining. So make sure you press open your seams like so. We already use hemming gum to hold down our seams, and then you're going to steam press this using your bust arm. So try to mold it by using your steam iron to just press it on the sides like so. Press, press, press. Be careful as you're pressing so that you don't burn it. And you can either cage the lining or you can use an underbra wire. So you do the same for both sides. Press and cage the lining or use an underbra wire. So here we used the lining to turn it over, and then you're going to stitch just these parts of the bodies. So you're going these 3 parts, that's where you're going to stitch together. So just carefully stitch them along the 1/2 inch allowance that has been added, and when you turn it over, this is what it's going to look like. Sorry we couldn't go into details about some things on this tutorial because we had limited time to deliver on this wedding dress, and as you know, content creating takes a lot of time and patience and detailed explanation. So I just did the best I could to share this process with you guys. So this is the back now, and then that's the side. So that's how it's going to be attached. But first I'm going to show you how to attach the yoke of the back. So here we had already turned the back up. So here we're going to stitch the lower part together. So you're going to stitch the two cups together, and when you're done stitching the two cups together, you're going to attach it to that corset part of the front body. So here we cut a net that was the full length from the neck all the way down to the under corset length, and then we left an allowance of about half of an inch just so that we could turn it with the lining without climbing the skin net. So here you're going to sew above the stitches that we used in sewing down the net on that level. That way you're going to be sure that you're not climbing the net. So make sure you sew on the part that has the stitches for the net so that you just sew above it, making sure that you're not climbing the net. So when you're done, you're going to give it a good press and turn it over. When this is what we had when we were done. For the lace fabric, we eventually placed the lace fabric on it. Notice the continuity. It doesn't look like it was joined there because it was pressed properly. And then this is the result. We're going to sew the layers down together just so that they are flat and together. You can also stitch that place. We removed the stitches. The reason we stitched that place was just to hold down the net on that level, so you can loosen the stitches when you are done, like we've done for this other side. Initially, we were going to use a zipper, but we changed our minds last minute and went for a lace-up back. Now for the cutout, you're going to cut on the wrong side of the lace using your soldering iron. And the reason you're going to cut on the wrong side using your soldering iron is because sometimes the soldering iron can stain the lace. So if it's staining, it's better it's staining the back and not the front of the lace. So just carefully cut out. Notice that I am not going deep into the corners. It is a white lace with white nets. It's a white embroidery on white net. So by the time you place it on the organdi, it's going to blend. They are not going to see those corners that you didn't go deep into. So this is the sleeve, and this is some of the cutouts that we have placed on the sleeve. And then this is the center front where that joining was done. This is a placement of the panel lace, and we just carefully placed it to cover the joining. Nobody would notice that we were hiding anything, or nobody noticed that, there was a reason why we placed it. So on the other sides of the lace, we used different types of lace because we didn't want it to look basic. We wanted it to look, shimmery and, regal. Also notice that we avoided the waist. We didn't put the cutouts on the waist. That's because we later made the cutouts to climb the top of the fabric, and the reason for doing that is to conceal or to hide the joining of the waist and the waist of the top part and the skirt part. So to sew down these cutouts, we used invisible thread. We used an invisible thread and needle, and then we had already pinned the cutouts, so we patiently and carefully began to stitch down these placements to the lower part of the skirt. This is how to calculate your 90 degrees flare. So you're going to multiply your waist circumference by 4 and divide it by 6.28, which is double of 3.14, like so. And then you're going to take the measurement from the corner of you'll fold your fabric in a triangular form like so, and take your measurements from the pointed end. We came down from the waistline by 1 inch. Being wanted to be so bulky, then we started marking intervals of 8 inches like so. And then for the 8 inches, you wouldn't go to the bottom of the fabric, because the way we're going to do is we're going to cut nets that would be longer than that 8 inches. So we use 12 inches for the width of the net, so that it would overlap. Just go ahead and fold your hard net like so, and cut out strips of 12 inches wide. When you're done, you're going to use the strips of the 12 inches to create pleats on the interval lines that you have drawn on the petticoat like so. So you can pleat anyhow you want to, just make sure that it's full, because the fuller the petticoat, the more the skirt is going to stand, and the more it stands, the more beautiful it will come out. So make sure that your pleats are tight and they're properly and evenly distributed, so that one side is not higher than the other side. Do not pleat into the allowance. Make sure the net is flat where the allowance is, and cut in a slanty manner like so. This is the outcome of the petticoat, and this is it when it's standing erect. And then we included the final layer, which is the lining of the skirt, and we just multiplied her waist by 3 and then gathered it. For the sleeve, we decided to fill it up with pearls and also the body of the dress, but we used a pearl machine for the sleeve. We place the pearl in the top compartment of the machine, and then you place the stopper in the lower compartment of the machine, and then you're going to grab the sleeve like so and slide it in making sure that it's just one layer that is entering, and then you staple it and the pearl has been attached. However, for the lower part of the skirt, we didn't use the pearl machine. We used our hand to stitch down the pearls to the lower part of the dress. And then this is the stopper. You just place it in. It has to, the pointy ends have to be facing upwards, and then the pearl is stuck in that lower top compartment. So this is just the process again for clarity's sake. Then when you staple it, it sticks, and then yeah, we just continue the procedure until we were satisfied. And this is the result. This is one of the lace placements we did for the dress, and this is another lace placement. And then she was so excited. Meanwhile, we made this dress in Lagos and we shipped it to Abuja, and it was a perfect fit. She even left this review for us, which, brought a lot of media traffic to our page. Yeah, so it was amazing. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye.